Hello world, it's Lee Kelson coming to you from the Innovation Centre in Maroochydore, and I'm here with Simon Kaplan of Urban Institute. How are you, Simon?
G'day. Excellent. Thanks for having me along.
It's a pleasure. So we've been talking to people about smart cities and all sorts of technologies that's happening and the excitement of the new CBD here, which we're going to talk about in a sec. But can you just give us a quick backstory on the Simon Kaplan story?
So I'm Simon, and I come originally from South Africa. I was an academic in a previous life, and about 5 years ago I left academia and started my own company, the Urban Institute, where I'm working today and living on the Sunshine Coast and just loving every moment.
Right. And how long have you been on the Sunshine Coast?
Well, about 5 years now.
Right, okay.
In Brisbane before that.
Right. And from academia, what were you doing in academia?
I was a professor and a dean at QUT.
Okay. All right. Very interesting. And
Sorry you asked now.
not at all. I love academics. And so what were you a professor of?
My background is in computer science.
Right.
So I've been playing with this kind of tech for 35 years.
Right. And in front of us here, we've got the dashboard control panel for the Urban Institute.
It's called the Urban Pulse.
Urban Pulse, okay. And talking about smart cities and Urban Institute, tell us about Urban Institute.
So Urban Institute is a startup, began originally in Germany. I was brought on board to set up the APAC operations. And our goal is to help cities deal better with their data. Cities are incredibly data rich, but the data tends to be locked up in little silos. And of course, they have gaps in their data as well. If you can free all that data up, you not only create new economic opportunity for the city, you also allow the city to operate more effectively and more transparently, deliver new services to residents, create things that they simply haven't been able to do beforehand. Some of that, as I say, comes from the existing data. Some of it comes from new data from sensors and cameras and things like that get deployed. But that complete picture allows the city to get much closer to its vision than it's been able to in the past.
And obviously Maroochydore CBD is being developed at the moment, so that's a pretty exciting project.
Yes, it really is. It's a fascinating combination of a greenfield site in that they're turning the old Horton Park golf course into literally a new city within a city, but also it's connected, of course, to all the existing parts of the Sunshine Coast, and that interconnectivity is also very, very interesting. And the goal, of course, is to create an environment that will drive economic development in the state. The smart, healthy, creative mantra, I think, is a very good one, and also demonstrate to all of Australia that it is possible to create cities that are very, very low carbon footprint, very high dynamic when it comes to economics, very nice and comfortable to live in.
So we hear smart cities bandied around a lot, and a lot of people I speak to ask, what does that actually mean? So for people that don't understand, what does smart cities mean, and what is the benefit for the wider community?
So to me, a smart city is a city that uses its data to be better for its citizens. All cities are smart, right? We've got reliable electricity and drinkable water and reasonably safe roads. Historically, that's absolutely fascinating. So in some ways, the term is a little bit silly. But what people really mean by it is this focus on data, which is a new thing for cities.
So does it sort of dovetail into the idea of big data, and is that part of the smart cities?
Big data is certainly a part of it. For example, if you deploy a CCTV network, the amount of data you get is going to be eye-wateringly enormous because you've got all these cameras producing data at 60 frames a second or whatever. But the volume isn't necessarily the important thing. You could, for example, instrument all of the parking bays near Kings Beach with parking sensors and then share that information with both residents and tourists so that the amount of time you have to spend finding a park before you get your kids onto the beach during the Christmas holidays goes right down. The amount of data there is tiny, but the benefit is enormous.
Right. A great example that people can relate to, because we all know how hard it is to find a park at the beach in summer and getting the family down to the beach. So we've got the control panel, or the dashboard, I guess, in front of us here. So can you sort of talk us through this?
So this dashboard captures information from a number of different cities around the world. Some of the data comes from projects that we've been doing on the Sunshine Coast. Some of it comes from Germany and elsewhere. And the idea is that this, I wish I could see more clearly, this grid that we have here has a number of little tiles on it, and each tile relates to a particular aspect of improving city management. So we've got smart lighting, so you can track how your lighting system is doing. We've got environmental sensing, so we can track carbon levels, pollutant levels, and things like that. We've got a share bike system in here, so you can see where this that actually comes from the city of Cologne, and it shows you where every share bike in the city of Cologne actually is. Right. And the hilarious thing about that is that people have been nicking the bikes. So they had 1,200 bikes in Cologne, but if you look at the map today, they've started spreading across all of Europe. It's absolutely hysterical to watch how they've been moving. Someone gets on a train with their bike and they just keep going.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's parking and water meters and the solar farm and all kinds of other things come together to paint this picture.
And so who would access this control panel? Would this be a local government that would have access to this?
Well, this particular one is just a demonstrator of the different kinds of data that we can integrate. What we would do in practice is we provide a whole rich palette of different data sources, some of which would be made available on a public-facing website, some of which would be on different combinations of things depending on the different jobs that people do. So for example, if you're in disaster management, you want to track traffic and floods and things like that. If you're in parks, you want to see irrigation levels and utilization of parks. So you can adjust watering capability and so on. It's going to be, a council is such a rich, varied combination of interests and services, and the system that we wants to track all of those and learn things that we couldn't learn before. Like, what is the relationship between traffic and parking and waste bins, right, for example, and how do you use those insights so you can use the resources the city has more effectively? Right. Questions like that.
Yeah. Fantastic. And so from the Urban Institute's perspective, you mentioned you're a startup. Where to from here?
So a year ago we were 2. Today we are 15, so we're growing very nicely. And I think the ecosystem provided by the Innovation Centre and more broadly on the Sunshine Coast has been a big driver of that growth. We're expanding. We have 10 projects around Australia at the moment. We have another 2 or 3 looking very strong. We've got some stuff starting up in New Zealand. We're looking at Singapore. So our goal is to grow to cover all of the APAC region, and our sister company in Germany is then covering Europe and the Middle East and Americas and so on.
And so your ideal customer is particularly local governments or any government, I imagine?
So it's any government. Local governments are really important. Also large utilities and so on. Australia's a little bit unlike other parts of the world where, for example, our electricity and water companies in the state tend to belong to the state government, even though they set up as independent organisations. The shareholders are still majority in state government. So we have to work across all the levels of government and help all the levels of government to work together, because traffic, for example, in the Sunshine Coast is of tremendous importance to all of us who live there, but the traffic system is actually controlled by the state government. Right. So you can never not need to work effectively across all of the levels of government. Fortunately, they're usually pretty cooperative.
And are you seeing a move towards smart cities, across the world?
Very much so. Urbanisation is one of the major drivers. If you go look at any megatrends website, they'll tell you that urbanisation is one of the top 2 or 3 trends. So cities are getting bigger, but resources aren't growing at the same rate, right, and yet citizen demand is increasing at the same time. So cities have got to find a way to do much more with much less. They've got to find a way to be much more innovative and agile in the way they engage with their citizens, and technology is an inescapable part of that. And all smart cities is a nice buzzword for helping cities achieve that.
Yeah. Fantastic, Simon. Awesome startup, Urban Institute here on the Sunshine Coast. Keep watching more for more excellent entrepreneurial stories and academic stories like Simon's here, and go and check out Urban Institute if you haven't seen it. It's pretty amazing technology, and we'll be bringing you more stories from the Sunshine Coast thanks to Invest Sunshine Coast. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks very much for having me.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.